voice. We can talk about controversial issues such as human rights without risking, to upset other countries. Being small gives us really the advantage of also being a mediator, a bridge builder. Sometimes when there are opposing opinions in the UN on a particular topic, we see our role as mediator and as offering a platform to bring diverging views together. So, we don't have illusions that we can change the world, but we will never cease to raise our voice, even if it is not always heard.
Thank you.
My name is MacArthur. Nice to meet you. Being such a small country, besides the geographical advantage, you guys are defenseless?
I'm sorry?
Are you guys defenseless? Like any country could come over and take you?
Yeah, I mentioned that we don't have a military force, and contrary to what some people believe, we also do not have a defense agreement with either of our neighbors. Neither Austria nor Switzerland would be obliged to defend us in case we were attacked. And that again leads me to the explanation I gave why our multilateral engagement in the UN is so important. The only protection that a country like Liechtenstein has is if the rest of the world respects international law. And that's why this is one of our focuses within the UN.
Okay, and for your governmental system, do you guys lead towards more democratic view or a different system?
Do we work more?
Are you guys more democratic, even though you're like a monarch?
I would say all of our parties would have very strong democratic elements. We are considered what people describe as a direct democracy. We have the possibility that citizens can collect signatures to actually provoke a law to be introduced or an existing law to be abolished. And it depends whether it is a constitutional law, what degree, what position the law has in our legislature. But between 1,200 and 1,500 signatures can actually also lead to a public referendum. And if a certain decision in Parliament involves or surpasses a certain financial amount, Parliament is obliged to submit it to the voters in a public referendum. We don't vote as often as our Swiss neighbors do. They have an even more direct democracy than we do. But we go to the, we vote probably easily 4 or 5 times a year on certain issues.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I was wondering, as an ambassador, do you sometimes not personally agree with the views of Liechtenstein, and would that make it hard to represent Liechtenstein?
It's a very good question. I have been very fortunate that I did not have ever to represent views of my government with which I disagreed personally. But let me tell you that I greatly admire many colleagues of mine who in that respect are challenged on a daily basis. And as a diplomat, you have no choice. You always are not only the spokesperson, but you are the direct representative of your head of state. And you absolutely have to defend your country's viewpoint, whether you like it or not. And that is, I have to say, I am really lucky, but in many countries, being a diplomat takes a really serious personal toll. But I have never been in that situation, fortunately. Thank you.
Hello. I was wondering what, when you mention human rights, what all does that extend to? Is it encompassing LGBT rights?
Yes, it covers the whole spectrum that an organization like the UN deals with. including LGBT, including the rights of children, including the rights of physically and mentally challenged people, including the rights of minorities. We attach a great importance to that aspect, also something that is a delicate topic within the UN and elsewhere, but we are very much engaged in the right of self-determination, you know, people's groups within existing countries that seek advanced degrees of autonomy. And maybe that has to do with the fact that we as a small country always had to manifest ourselves within a larger environment. So yeah, it covers all aspects of human rights. None of them are excluded.
All right. Thank you.
My pleasure.
For someone...
Maybe you can lift it. Yes.
For someone who's interested in entering into diplomacy, what would you recommend studying at university?
I think, you know, even more important than what you study, namely political science, international relations, international law, equally important, and from what I hear for the US Foreign Service, almost more importantly, is how many and what languages you speak. And I heard from some of my former interns who underwent the test that language skills these days go beyond French and Spanish and German. Much in demand are Mandarin and Arabic and Russian also. So I would strongly encourage anyone who entertains the thought of entering the diplomatic service to pay a lot of attention to language skills. Now, I understand the State Department admittance test is it's very hard to pass, but I have a former intern. She did the test twice and failed twice, and she's going to do it a third time. Don't be discouraged. It's very, very hard to get in. And then, of course, you can also, if you do make it, you can choose between, from what I understand, you can opt for the foreign service that doesn't have to leave Washington. You can stay within the State Department, or you can opt for the other branch of the foreign service that is willing to be posted abroad.
Thank you.
You have waited for a long time.
Hello, yeah. Can I ask you a question in German?
Of course.
Okay, ist dieses Heiraten von Homosexuellen in Liechtenstein erlaubt?
Ist die Ehe oder die... Ja.
Dürfen Homosexuelle heiraten?
In Liechtenstein, same-sex couples cannot get married, but they're legal, what is it called?
Eingetragene.
Yes, it's recognized, and it can be, you know, they can register.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, the partnership is legalized and recognized, but not marriage.
And I have another question. You said education, like, you don't have that good colleges, but people from Liechtenstein go to like Austria, Switzerland. But how's that like easy if Liechtenstein is not a member of the
EU?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I did not mention that we do have we have two tiny private universities, and one that is has a student body of about 800-900. That's big for Liechtenstein. That teaches architecture and economic sciences with a special focus on financial services. But everything else, for everything else, our students go to Switzerland or Austria. The degrees are, of course, recognized everywhere, and we are also part, by virtue of our European Economic Area Treaty, we are part of the whole educational system of the European Union. So we can be participating in the Erasmus program. This is open to our students as it is to all students of the EU.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Hi, I had two questions. One, what is the average salary of an ambassador? Like, just like enough, like, I don't know. I was kind of curious, so, yeah.
Well, I can't talk about other countries. I can only give you a ballpark figure for probably an ambassador that starts. It's the salary of an ambassador is not only the salary; it's also the allowances. The allowances are supposed to cover, our cost of living and expenditures for our wardrobe and what have you. So I would say the starting salary of an ambassador, I'm now talking Liechtenstein, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, comparable countries, would probably be something around $120,000.
Wow.
Yeah. But you have to keep in mind that usually is preceded by a number of years that this person has been in diplomatic service. The position of an ambassador is something that many reach after 20 or 25 years. So by that time, I think you have deserved that salary.
The other question is, do you know what the daily routine of like an average person from Liechtenstein would be? Like, what would their daily routine be?
Well, we have people who work in the manufacturing industries. We have people who work in banks. We have people who still run their farm. What maybe sets our daily routine apart from, for example, the United States is that because we are so small, a lot of people still have a long lunch break and they go home for lunch. So there is at least one meal a day that the whole family has together.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Shall we switch here?
Hi, welcome, thank you. I know in December, the United Nations is hosting the Climate Change Summit in Paris, and I know Liechtenstein has already submitted their climate action plan, and that you all have quite a bit of solar per capita. What exactly are the country's goals for climate change, especially being so small, and you're here in a country where we're one of the few countries that still debate the very existence of it?
There you really, this is something that I don't have a very detailed answer for. But what I can tell, because the environmental issues they are something that I really, for some reason, they don't come up a lot in connection with my job here. So I'm really not up to date with regard to all the details, which I would be happy to provide you with. But what I can tell you is that we really try very hard in Liechtenstein to develop alternative sources of energy. The government has a very pronounced policy to subsidize, new constructions where the environmental issues are taken into consideration. For example, in Liechtenstein, we are not allowed to have air conditioning, but the government subsidizes people who install in their house a system whereby you can pump the water that cools in the ground up again into the houses, and that's the cooling effect during the day. So you get subsidies for that. We have an extremely stringent policy with regard to waste management. You have to buy, at our town council, you have to buy garbage bags. They cost about $3 a piece, and only those are picked up. Now, you're really very careful what goes into there, because everybody in Liechtenstein has in their garage or in wherever about 6-7 different containers. One for the newspapers, the green glass, the brown glass, the white glass, the aluminum, the biodegradables, the batteries, the what have you. And then there are places in each community where this is, can be deposited on a weekly basis. And only the things that can't go into any of those containers go into the $3 garbage bag. So this is something that we practice, and needless to say, we also buy those, I'm calling them now coupons, there is a more professional expression for it, because our ways to reach the climate targets, you know, it still will take a few years, and until that time we have to contribute financially. But if you are really interested, I have a fully fledged document for you ready by tomorrow if you like that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Going back to your earlier point of women getting the right to vote in the early 80s, was there like a traumatic situation that occurred that led up to it, or was it just like it's an about time moment?
Well, it was preceded by two what we call consultative referendums, in which, of course, you know, the first one was where only the women could vote, whether they wanted the right to vote and to be elected, and believe it or not, it was rejected. And the second one, a few years later, is again a consultative referendum where the men could vote, and it was rejected again. This was in the 70s. And then it was a couple of parliamentarians in the early 80s who really seriously tackled the issue, and who, in those days, Liechtenstein didn't have NGOs that dealt with gender issues, but they emerged in order to bring about female suffrage. So the NGOs worked tirelessly, and together with the parliamentarians and members of government, it then led to this referendum that it was not an overwhelming majority. But in 1984, it finally passed, and a lot of people ask me, why did it take so long? Liechtenstein is a very traditional society. Liechtenstein has one neighbor, namely Switzerland, that introduced the right to vote for women in the early 70s. So if you have an immediate neighbor with a kind of similar attitude, it influences, yeah, a lot. And you know, you also have to realize that because we didn't have the right for women to vote, we also didn't have equal access to education. So we didn't really have a sizable, well-educated female population that would go out to get that right. And everything has changed today, fortunately, so that sometimes when I talk to young women your age in my country, they have no idea what it took for things to change. And that is a great satisfaction for me, because that tells me we did something right. If your generation already doesn't know that there were difficulties then and what those difficulties were, that's a good thing. That means almost everything is now the way it should be. But there are always room for improvement.
Thank you.
My question is actually very similar to hers. Since 1984, how has gender equality and women empowerment improved since then?
We have, let me start with the sector where it's not very successful in terms of parity, and that is in the boardrooms, in the decision-making positions in our different sectors of the economy. There, really, things have to change badly. In our municipalities, the last elections we had, we elected one female mayor out of 11. That's also not something to brag about. In government, we have, for the last 15 years, we have 5 members of cabinet, the prime minister and 4 additional ministers, and each one of them has more than one ministry. And for the last 15, almost 20 years, we've had, out of the 5, 2 female. That's not a bad percentage. In parliament, we usually have, out of the 25 parliamentarians, 5 to 6 that are female. Also not glorious, but about the average in our part of Europe. But the boardrooms, on the corporate level, there is still a lot to be done.
Thank you.
Thank you.